Okay, so I've started the stream. Hello, everyone. I hope that the settings are okay. So today with me is Anna Danilchuk, or Anna from Ukraine. Uh, you know her from our cooperation with UETV, and today it is the first time when we work together on my personal channel, and I really hope that the live feed works well. Let me check it right now. So, hello.
Okay, really happy to be with you and really happy that you started your personal channel because I think Ukraine does not have enough people on YouTube. And knowing that we have plus one more combined with your UATV experience, that's amazing.
Well, and it works. It works. So I'm really excited because it's the first time I'm translating this on OBS Studio, and we are on live feed right now. So this is a new channel, but we are all used to talk about the topics that worry us and which are close to us, and that is Ukraine. That is Ukraine, Europe, our our fate in this whole process, and just to remind people that Russia has announced the 3-day truce, so-called, since last night, and during that night they launched ballistic missiles against Kiev and drones. It was a rough night in Kiev, and already tomorrow we have May the 8th, which is in the civilized world the victory day over Nazism. And the day later we have the 9th of May, the День Победы, Victory Day in Russia, which is regularly celebrated in an obscure and really aggressive way.
That's actually very disgusting how they managed to turn a very important victory into a very toxic tool of Russian propaganda. And now committing war crimes, they want to hide it with the past. And I think that one of these worst things is that they forget about millions of other people coming from different nations that fought together. And I don't know what do you think about that, but I was surprised to learn that Donald Trump decided to celebrate Victory Day on the 8th of May and to remind people that this is also the day of the American victory. And I know that he likes, to some extent, the mindset of Putin, but there's definitely something that the Kremlin dictator won't like. I wonder how that will be shown on media tomorrow, for example.
Yeah, and he also stated 2 victory days. So Russia has 1 victory day, and now the United States will have entire 2 victory days. One is for World War I, and the second is for World War II. That is, let's say it's
Mm.
funny because it reminds of the old Cold War era. Let's do something better than the USSR. No, let's do better than America. And who's gonna be the first in space? But now, yeah, it's just about calendar days. So times are changing. Yeah, like Bob Dylan's song, times are changing, and we have some serious tensions in Asia right now, and I was really, really sad to hear about the tensions between those two countries in Asia. We know about them, we have heard that on radio, because for the last 3 years of full-scale invasion, and since 2014, we got really tired of war, and we are sad to see that a conflict is brewing in other part of the world when you know you can avoid it. Yeah, so war is never good, and we know that personally, I believe.
Right, but I think that those wars, even really far away from Ukraine, like in India and Pakistan, it is also the consequence of Russian invasion of Georgia, Russian invasion of Ukraine, because what we observe now is that this old system of safety and security is not working. It's broken. And all this like concerns, escalation, management efforts, they did not work out. And different countries, different evil minds inside that countries, they don't think a lot about the consequences they can get because they see Putin is okay. Putin is again back from this international diplomatic isolation because of Donald Trump. And for example, if Russia gets some Ukrainian territories, if Russia is not fully prosecuted, if we don't have something similar as Nuremberg processes after the fall of the Nazi regime, it will continue to other places because big nuclear countries, aggressive authoritarian regimes, they see it as a green light. If there are no bad consequences, if there is no real punishment, then why not do something evil? And that's why this war in Ukraine is so decisive for the rest of the world. Not just about our territories, not just about the future of Europe or the gas prices in the United States. It's about the future wars or absence of these wars.
Yes, and actually, the Victory Day is a Remembrance Day in Ukraine right now. We used to have all these, crazy celebrations and hailing the veterans of that great victory of the Patriotic War. I remember that as a child when even Putin came to Kyiv. If you remember when the famous Vinok fell onto Yanukovych. So you remember that, right?
That was a sign.
That was a sign.
That was symbolic.
And
Wasn't that Medvedev? It's a
I don't remember for sure, was it Putin or Medvedev? But anyway, each year the president of Russia
the
used to come.
Kremlin gang.
Yeah, he used to come to Ukraine for the.
The Kremlin gang.
Yeah. And we were part of that gang, actually. We celebrated that together. And now we are apart. And it is a Remembrance Day in Ukraine right now, but in Russia, it is still the celebration of the cult of death, let's say so. They are saying we can repeat and not remember the heroes. Not let's build a better world, but we can wreck you all again if you wish not to give up, for example. So it's a very different mentality.
Yes, sure. You are very right in that different phrases that we use, never again, and we can repeat. And the focus has shifted in Russia long ago, and they actually stopped talking about this like peace, security, respect to the veterans, and focused on hatred, focused on blood and numbers of victims. And indeed, to some extent, that is a celebration of death. What we observe right now demonstrates a similar approach. They don't care about the numbers of the lost people. Soon Russia will reach like 1 million lost soldiers since the start of their war against Ukraine. And unfortunately, many of the very important victories of the Second World War were very bloody just because Stalin did not care about life of the soldiers, among whom there were lots of Ukrainians. They simply needed to return back a city or a particular territory for a certain communist event. It's important to get territories back, but it's also important to consider lives, to consider strategy, how you get it all back. And of course, this great myth of the Great Patriotic War, when, for example, I live in the western part of Ukraine, and I remember that it was just recently that our memorials changed the date from 1941 to 1939. Even though to these territories, war came in 1939. And a very logical question. What was Nazis? They agreed on this division of the world, and they kind of liked everything. We have this information, but it is a very logical question. If your Great Patriotic War started in 1941, what were you doing?
Nazism in Europe. the front line rolled twice over Ukraine. First, when the Germans occupied most of Ukraine and entered Russian territory, and later when the Soviets were pushing back. So Ukraine made a great sacrifice. All other nations made it, but now the Russian Federation is trying to confiscate, they confiscate the victory, and they've been doing a great job in confiscating it in the minds and hearts of people all over Europe. Memorials, all these eternal regiment walkings in Berlin, in Austria, in Sweden right now. They are appropriating victory, and they are saying that the USSR made the greatest impact, so the USSR is Russia in their rhetorics. No, it is not, because there were Ukrainians, Belarusians, Lithuanians, Polish people in the Soviet army too, as well in the Allies and all the other nations. They fought together with the Allies, with the Americans, with British and all other people. So it is a day to remember that those victims and those sacrifices, and also to change the attitude, because war is never good. It is number one, and number two, all made sacrifice to live in a better world today, not only Russia as they try to present it.
How do you think, Pavlo, what is the most toxic myth, toxic narrative about the Second World War, the great patriotic wars that Russia managed to fix in the global media?
I believe that the fact that without Russia, everyone would lose to Hitler, to Nazis, and because of that, everyone
Mhm.
must give Russia what they want today, because of what happened 90 years ago.
Mhm.
Part of sovereignty here,
Mhm.
part of
Mhm.
sovereignty there. Oh, you buy our gas and nobody else's. You don't help Ukraine. Why? Because of World War II, and that's how they try to
Mhm.
act.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so too. And another very bad result is that division of the world, this iron curtain that appeared, and Soviets who pretended they would take care of the people on those territories, when in reality it was just one totalitarian regime falling, Nazi regime falling, and another surviving. And then during the next decades, more victims of the regime were disappearing, were dying in Ukraine. For example, up in the 80s, there were victims of the communist regime. Less than 10 years before the collapse of this monstrous structure, they were killing people because of language, because of culture, because of their intellect, because of their potential to develop independent Ukraine, independent Belarus, independent Georgia, whatnot.
Yes, and apparently it was the lesser evil at that moment, because the Allies were desperate when Soviet Union and the Third Reich were united, and I believe if there were not the military conflict between these two states, the outcome of the history could be very different. But history knows no
Mhm.
buts, as we remember. It has happened, and we cannot go into alternate history. It happened as it happened, and for the nations probably that were under a communist yoke, it was a lesser evil, because the other side, with the racial theory, uh, wanted to perform outright genocide, purification, as they said, and maybe millions and millions more would have died. So it is a historic fact. They chose the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union agreed to help in the war against Nazis, and we ended up with the preconditions for a united Europe because of that. Because there was the Iron Curtain, there was that threat of further USSR expansion. We've got NATO and we've got European Union because of that. Actually, the two entities that we call the best in the terms of maybe morals and some principles, European principles that we are all talking about, and Europeans are saying that Ukraine is defending European principles right now. They all emerged in the aftermath of World War II, and because the USSR was on one side of the Allies.
Yeah, I loved reading about this Operation Unthinkable that was considered by some after the fall of the Nazis regime to continue and liberate Poland, to continue and liberate potentially Ukraine, and lead to the fall of Stalin's regime. Just imagine what a different world that would be if we did not have that decades of Stalinism and other not much better communist leaders. Like I feel like it's your channel, but I ask you questions, but I do have one. One of these like negative comments that I can get on the channel uh, come from people who are frightened, who trust this Kremlin narratives that sometimes go out from the White House today that let's just give up because this will cause a nuclear war. Let's just sacrifice Ukraine. Once you've been a part of the Soviet Union, I had this comment, and it was okay for me in faraway country in Europe. So if you are a part of the Soviet Union or a constructed Frankenstein, uh, it's not a problem for me in that faraway country of Europe. How do you explain people like that why sacrificing Ukraine will not work for the safety and security of their faraway European countries?
Well, I used to have a lot of recordings with our Irish friend, Cormac
Mhm.
Smith, and he had a saying
Mhm.
that it is today our money and weapons or our children and blood tomorrow for Europe. Because
Mhm. Mhm.
it's the way that we explained it. As Poland was the great barrier from communist regime in the beginning of 20th century, right now Ukraine is basically the
Mhm.
only force that is holding back the Russian army from threatening Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia, no matter how obscure that might sound, but Russian army will threaten them as soon as they try to get there. No matter how they are friends with their prime ministers, the Russians and the prime ministers of these countries, they are not safe. But maybe they think the other way. The Baltic states are in a great threat too. And it's not just about territory, it's about reclaiming something. The Baltic Sea and the Baltic states are a platform for launching missiles. So they are really closer
Mhm.
to other European capitals and they can outpass the air defense, outmass it, like suppress it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not about only ideology and taking back what was Russian once and they're saying it is pure strategic interest to take control, to take advantage of uh, territory like the Baltic Sea, like the Black Sea. So controlling trade, controlling human resources, after all, because Russia always used their human resource to win everything, to win battles, and they continue to do so. And if, God forbid, Ukraine falls right now, or in the nearest future, if we are surrendered, as some suggest to Russia, there will be many, many issues and lots of money to spend, many soldiers to prepare for those Europeans and probably for Americans because they cannot stay aside. It's trade. If there's no one to trade with in Europe, then it's bad for America. Like that.
I think that something important has shifted in minds of many leaders in the European Union, and more people in Europe don't see Ukraine as a burden. I'm sure you remember that Ukraine fatigue and so on. It was so wrong because, come on, Russia is to blame. There should be Russia fatigue, not Ukraine fatigue. We were living our life peacefully, not interfering with anyone. And I do have this feeling that more and more people now consider Ukraine an asset because we have this very precious, very valuable experience of real war. Because what many NATO countries were preparing for does not seem realistic anymore. It is the war of drones. It's the war of various surveillance technologies like satellites, Starlinks, something they were not ready to test. And many of the combat experiences they had in faraway countries, they are irrelevant when fighting with Russia. And unfortunately, Russia keeps developing the technologies. They also get experience, they also get skills. And I'm sure that those North Korean soldiers and those Chinese mercenaries, they are here not just to back up Putin, they are also to get the experience for future wars in their territories, in their areas, in their so-called zones of influence. I hate this term, but if and this all has the potential to expand. Europe, America, the United States, they will all need people with real life combat experience, and this is Ukraine. Actually, the only country that knows how to fight against Russia in this modern conditions, with drones, with marine drones that break world records, right? We have just downed two combat aircraft. Before we have downed two
Helicopters,
helicopters,
yeah,
Me
I
8.
remember.
Yeah, it seems like this drones work in doubles, like always. We need to. So, and Ukraine is willing to innovate, to learn, to share. And I'm happy to hear that more and more of the Ukrainian soldiers report that there are things that they learn from NATO trainers, like management, like some standards inside the army. But at the same time, lots of NATO soldiers and NATO instructors learn from our soldiers, and they come here or they meet elsewhere with this desire to learn from Ukrainian experience, the way we use drones, the way we create, the way we outsmart Russian air defense, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and the fact that the world is unstable right now is a fact. So we cannot do anything with this. And actually, I felt the same that Ukraine is not considered a burden anymore, but an asset for European Union. Yes, the same. And just today,
Let's keep repeating this
yeah,
phrase
let's repeat it. And
on our channels.
yeah, of course, we will. I will change the thumbnail maybe that Ukraine is an asset and add it to the headline after the stream. And I've just heard today from Maria Mezintseva, which is MP of Ukraine and the leader of the parliamentary group of Ukraine in the PACE, the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe. And she spoke with European Union leaders, with the European Commission frequently, and they are really surprised. They are surprised in the amount and the speed of European compliance reforms that Ukraine has taken. Surely there's a lot more to do, but they are really shocked with the speed of this implementation of judicial system and everything else. And from the practical and pragmatic point of view, they consider Ukraine more an asset right now, not a burden. And it is the thing that inspired me the most today. Because, since 2014, many of our communicators try to convey this, the victim position of Ukraine. Oh, we've been attacked. We are so badly hurt. Russia everywhere. We are weak and Russia strong. No, we should communicate the pragmatic point of view. Lithuania has invested 10 million euros into drone production in Ukraine. Denmark and Sweden do the same. They invest money into producing weapons for Ukraine in Ukraine. Of course, later to buy them off for themselves when the logistical, networks are ready, when those weapons are battle tested and they are polished in combat, they have experience, and they will have Ukrainian instructors to help their armies to increase their security. So we are talking about pragmatism right
But
now.
yeah, I think that a lot has changed also in the minds of Ukrainians. Observing this escalation management, some failed reactions from the NATO countries on Russia's provocation, I think more and more people realize that Ukraine is among those very few adults in the world, and that we actually behave very properly in the context of these global threats. And I think it's quite obvious that Lithuania wants drones from Ukraine because Ukraine builds them and survives because we have good drones. With these drones, we secure our territories. We destroy Russian arsenals and this way save thousands of innocent lives that otherwise would be taken with that missiles. We destroy Russian oil industry. So if I were, I don't know, in Argentina and I had to buy drones, I would definitely choose the Ukrainian ones because we build them not for the sake of building, development, academic research. We fight to survive with the help of these drones, so we definitely know how to build them. And one more thing I hope will change in the attitude towards Ukraine, that people will finally let that Aryan Katan fall in their heads and start thinking about Ukraine not as a part of the Russian zone influence zone, but okay, let it be Central Europe, let it be Eastern Europe, but it's a part of your and our Europe. Please feel as if it was taken away from you during this decade, but in reality, Ukraine is returning to the European Union, to Europe. That is our home. What I love at the beginning of my channel, there are so many people who rediscovered Ukraine, who rediscovered Ukrainian heritage in their families, but they have also rediscovered Ukrainian heritage in their national histories. And they kept telling me, did you know that the wife of our king, and I don't remember the name, but was the daughter of Yaroslav Mudry, and that one, and this one. And they were happy to discover that. And they've actually come to this understanding that there were a lot of proto-Ukrainian people all over Europe, and we were an active part of that vibrant culture. And it's just a couple of very bad decades and some bloody centuries of this Russian empire project that we have to keep fighting. But still, with all that violence, with all that terror, we remain strong. We've preserved our culture, our language, our people. I'm not sure many could endure what Ukraine did during this 300 years of wars, but we did, and I'm sure it has some reason.
Yeah, I really hope that this 300 years of wars, generations of people that lived and all of that, that it will come to a more peaceful and stable period really soon, because we've got United Europe without wars since World War II, when the European Union was
And the
created.
collapsed Russian Federation.
Yeah,
And the
probably.
collapsed Russian Federation, like stronger united Europe and the dissolution of the Russian Federation,
I believe that a lot of people would enjoy and celebrate that. A lot of people
us
inside,
including.
yes, us included, because of all the horrors that have been made and impacted onto all of us, um, and our neighbors, our Georgian friends, Moldova, and everyone else. It's just like a crazy other world where here you have civilized folks and here you have Mordor, like from Tolkien's books, and it doesn't seem to be real. It is hard to understand that there's really no civilization back there in the east, in that form that we are used in Europe to perceive it. And that is why it is part of the success of Russian propaganda in Europe, because they are trying to portray them as Europeans, the Russians, and like from Peter the Great and the Peter the First, how no matter how you call it, the first emperor of Russia, they've been
It's not
trying.
the great.
Yeah, not so great, and they were trying to build a European niche, European like state empire, to be like the empire of Sweden, probably, or the empire of Netherlands or the British Empire. They tried it and failed. And yeah, it's like they trying to cosplay a European state, and that is why it works in the minds of Europeans.
Right. I often love comparing Russia to Frankenstein, consisting of very different and disproportional parts. In reality, this largest country in the world does not actually need any new territories because they don't have enough resources and even people to take care of those miserable territories they temporarily keep under control of the Kremlin. And I believe that 21st century is not for empires. So whatever Putin wants to recreate will actually destroy him and is like all the future of the Russian Federation. And another trouble is that many still see Russia because of ignorance, because of lack of knowledge, as like all Russia is Russian and it's all Ruski Mir, when in reality it consists of hundreds of different nations, different cultures and languages. And in future, this actually gives a very good chance that many new countries will appear, and they may not be so crazy because Russia is too big to be perhaps controlled democratically, and right now it's very centralized. It's not a federation. It's a classical like mafia empire when the Kremlin takes away all the resources and brings nothing back to republics like Sakha, to Tatarstan, to Chechnya. And the moment Russia loses the war, it will all collapse. But people should not be afraid of that collapse. Just as the collapse of the Soviet Union did not lead to the nuclear war. I am sorry, but right now, this nuclear war is way more real than after the collapse of the Putin's regime and the dissolution of Russia. The task is of the democratic world, the task is to control this process, to predict this process, to facilitate this process, but not to try and prevent it because it's it's impossible to prevent something that is very natural. And the natural thing in the 21st century for empires to like dissolve, to disappear, it's not the century for the empires.
Yeah, and with India and Pakistan both having nuclear weapons, this hysteric laugh right now, and exchanging strikes, the world is really closer to a nuclear war than in the aggression of a nuclear state against a non-nuclear state right now. If Russian soldiers leave Ukraine, there will be no war, and if Ukrainian soldiers leave Ukraine, there will be no Ukraine. It's like that. And we still do not have any nukes in our arsenal. I believe those earthquakes in Vinnytsia are not nuclear tests, secret underground laboratory.
Maybe. Oh,
Шалена Бджілка
Ukraine
edition.
was. Oh, that would be nice. Poroshenko involved.
Yeah.
Um, you know, uh, Actually, Ukraine was the brain of the Soviet Union. And I believe that a lot of people involved in the development of the Soviet nuclear weapons came from Ukrainian research institutions. And I believe we do have access to the knowledge of how that can be produced. Taking into account, we have a lot of nuclear power plants in Ukraine. We may also have some resources to do the job. So
Enriched uranium time, yeah.
yeah, I don't mind, I don't mind. Like sometimes people say, as a girl, you have to be kinder. But as a Ukrainian girl, after 3 years of the full-scale war, I want nukes. I want my nukes back.
Yeah, that's actually that's tough because if I think about all that we have lived through, not even considering, even it's not even a fraction of what the people that come from the east and south have suffered, the ones who had leave their homes, but still, it's a great, great psychological trauma. All these stresses, air raid alerts, and do you imagine what will happen after the war? After there will be no more air raid alerts for some time, and like these gigachat Ukrainians will go into the European labor market, selling defense industry in packages. That will override the entire region. And yeah, some people say Ukraine is a sleeping giant. We have potential. We have potential to be the center again of this industry. Were a lot of solar panels and windmills before the Russian invasion. Of course, they've destroyed a lot of that. And yeah, we have a great future. That's what I believe in.
Uh, I support your vision. And, often people speak about these traumas that we experience, and of course, the size of the tragedy that surrounds us is enormous. You think about one thing and then another worse things happens, like the destruction of Kakhovka Dam, the destruction of Children's Cancer Hospital, this attack on Sumy on Palm Sunday. Like every time you think nothing can match that, and then Russians do something worse. But at the same time, I keep thinking about, this post-Second World War generation in Europe, and these were people who went through a very tough, very violent experience of the World War, but somehow they went out stronger, more motivated, happier. And if we think about Europe or the United States of the 50s, of the 60s, that was a very good time. That was a time of development and innovation, travel, and so on. And I hope that something similar will happen to Ukrainian post war generations, that we will not focus on our traumas and our tragedies, but we will be stronger, more resilient, and more open to the opportunities, and that we will actually boost that energy for life. This is what I felt when I came to Irpin, when people just started reconstructing it after the occupation. I was worried that I will feel bad there, that I will see some awful things there. But after a couple of months, uh, you could hear people working around the houses, you could hear hammers working, you could hear a lot of children. And it was contrary to what I expected. It was not an empty, dead desert, but it was so full of life. It was just like an excess of life was there. So I hope this will happen to Ukraine, this will happen to Europe, and this will happen to the world, but not Russia because it will be busy dissolving.
Yeah, all the people will figure out for themselves how they want to live, I believe. And I've got the same vibes as you do. As you know, I am a university teacher right now. I have a couple of students, and there are students from Bucha.
Mhm,
I was
mhm,
pleasantly shocked to see how energetic and lively they are. It might seem they are from Bucha. They lived through the occupation and the symbol of Russian genocide,
mhm.
all those horrible scenes. But they are very lively. The city is rebuilt. It's the town. It's a small town. Yeah, it's rebuilt right now. They make a small media about Bucha and the Bucha district. They have a civil war with Irpin. Who is better? All of that.
A competition, a competition.
A competition. Yeah,
Mhm.
like Avengers Civil War. That kind of thing. And what really we must do is do these streams, do podcasts, blogs, and say that we're still here and there's a future. There's a good future for maybe all of us, I hope, and I hope a safe one.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm really happy that you have now this personal channel, so we have double a portion of your knowledge and your charisma. And right, we are here and we're going to stay here and observe once again Russia collapsing. I feel I like repeating that.
Yeah, we totally enjoy repeating that, right? Okay. So thank you very much for being with me on this channel today. It's the first stream ever. The test of the software and hardware too, but it seems to be okay. The people who were watching the stream tell me it's all okay. It's the picture is stable. There's sound. I believe it's a good start.
I was honored to be your testing partner,
The first
partner in
guest, it's
crime.
not already test in crime. It's the first guest on my channel.
But like, yeah, so that's an honor, honestly, and I am sure more and more people will subscribe to follow updates from Pavlo.
Uh, and
Thank you.
and to do that, I have to post regularly, which I will try
Yeah, you
to
do.
make a
You do.
habit. Yeah, to make a habit of that. So thank you again, Anna. I was really happy to see
You
you.
have,
Yeah,
thank you so much. And you have promised that you will do it.
yeah,
You will continue posting regularly. So that was a public promise,
yeah.
and now
Public
we
promise.
trust
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. I will do that.